Okay. Well, good evening, everybody. Nice to be back. Thanks for the good wishes. We had a great vacation, and I hope you also had a good break and ready to roll. Okay. A little louder. Maybe I should just increase the volume. 1 second. All right. I think that's about all I can do. Is it okay now? You can hear okay? Yeah? Okay, fine. So tonight we are going to talk about two covenants, and I'll explain what I mean shortly. But this class is really a continuation, although an independent lecture, but a continuation of something we spoke about previously. We brought a passage from the Book of Kings, which spoke about a woman and her husband who decided to make an attic room for the holy man of God, for the prophet Elisha, so that whenever he would come by their town, he would stay there in that room. And they wanted to make him very comfortable, so they made him a bed and a table and a chair and a candelabra, or candlestick. And the Zohar explains that these four things are called the four tikkunei shkinta, the four tikkunim of the divine presence. What is a tikkun? We explained that there are two meanings of the word tikkun. One meaning of the word tikkun is that it's a rectification of the Shekhinah, a rectification of anything is called a tikkun. Like tikkun olam is fixing up the world, rectifying the world. And the other meaning of the word tikkun is that it's a garment. So these four things, says the Zohar, are called the garments of the Shekhinah. In other words, those things through which the Shekhinah becomes revealed. Those things through which the divine presence becomes revealed. Now, the Arizal, Rabbi Yitzhak Luria, explains, via his student, Rabbi Chaim Vital, but he explains that these four things are actually four modes of operating in the world, four critical centers of life, which everybody, or at least almost everybody, is involved in, and in which we can reveal godliness if we do it in the right way. Do it in the right way, so to speak. Now, when I say doing it in the right way, it means doing it in the holy way. We explained last time we started to explain the concept of a bed, the bed which they made him. Although this is meant literally as well. They did make him a bed, and they did make him a table, or place a table over there, and a chair, and a candelabra, and so on. But nevertheless, the Zohar, explained by the Arizal, Rabbi Yitzhak Luria, explains that these things are critical areas of life, and are not just mystical, are not only lofty mystical concepts that have no bearing on daily life. On the contrary, they have every bearing on daily life. We started to explain last time that the concept of bed corresponds to the idea of intimate sexual relationships. Obviously, we don't want to talk about intimate issues in an open forum class, and the truth is, it's not necessary. I think everybody knows what we're talking about here. Contrary to what some may have heard, there is no sort of Kabbalistic ritual of sexual activity. So if any rabbi, or let's say purported rabbi, ever tries to convince you that this is a mode of divine worship or whatever, head for the hills. Get out of there as fast as you can. because such things are meant to be between husband and wife, sexual relationships between husband and wife, and only in holy situations, in other words, at certain times of the week, at certain times of the month, and so on. We spoke about this a little bit last time. I don't want to cover the ground that we covered last time. Listen to the previous class about the 4 garments of the Shekhinah. I want to go on a slightly different tack regarding the idea of what the bed represents. Now, let me just explain something, and this is a very important concept in Kabbalah in general. There are 2 ways to understand the Torah, 2 general ways in which to understand the Torah. One way of understanding the Torah, the legalistic way, or the way that is espoused in particular by Maimonides, the Rambam, is that he says the Torah talks primarily, the Torah being the Bible, talks primarily about things in the lower worlds, in other words, things of our world, and only hints to things up above. That is the approach, the sort of the Talmudic approach to Torah, to the Bible. The Torah speaks below and hints above. However, the Kabbalistic approach is exactly the opposite. The Torah speaks above and only hints below. So anything down below, down here in this world, is only a hint of the reality up above. And in fact, Kabbalah goes on to explain that there are multiple planes of reality. The planes of reality that we usually deal with are only there are 4 planes of reality that mostly we deal with in Kabbalah. There are actually 5, and then there's beyond that 5, there's a whole other type of existence I'll explain in a minute. These 4 levels of reality are called in Kabbalah the 4 worlds, as everybody knows. The word world in Hebrew, or olam, the world, is from the word he'elem, which means concealment. The lower the world, the closer it is to a physical reality, the more he'elem, concealment of the divine light there is. The lower the world, the more the divine light is concealed, or the Or Ein Sof, the infinite light, is concealed. The higher the world, the more it is revealed. So the 4 worlds that are spoken about are the world of Asiya, the lowest world, the world of Yetzirah, the next world up, the world of formation. The first world is called the world of action, or the world of making, of doing. The second world, Yetzirah, is the world of formation. The third world is called the world of Bria, the world of creation. The 4th world, the world of Atzilut, or closeness, the emanated world. It's not a created world, it's an emanated world. It's a revelation of that which preceded it. It's not a new creation. And then there's a world called Adam Kadmon, which includes all of them. It's sort of a meta world. And beyond that meta world of Adam Kadmon is the Tzimtzum. The Tzimtzum, the great constriction that brings all existence into being, seemingly outside of God, but actually not literally so, not actually so. So all of these 4, all of these 4 things that we spoke about before, the 4 bits of furniture which the woman furnished that room with, the bed and the table and the chair and the candle, or candelabra, all of those can be understood on multiple planes of explanation. Each of these worlds is also a different level of explanation of the Torah. So the deepest level of explanation of the Torah, or the Sodot HaTorah, the Sod, the secrets of the Torah, corresponds to the world of Atzilut. The deepest explanation of the Torah corresponds to the world of Atzilut. the inner dimension of Atzilut, the world of Adam Kadmon actually transcends to the secrets of the Torah. The secrets of the secrets, that's the world of Adam Kadmon. But anyway, Atzilut is the secrets of the Torah, then Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya are the level of Midrash, the level of Talmudic exegesis, and finally, the literal meaning of the text, the world of Asiya. So we can understand all of these things on multiple planes. Bed, we explained last time, had to do with sexual intimacy, but it also has to do not only with sexual intimacy, but it also has to do with the interface of the body and the soul. The Zohar tells us that the patriarch Abraham Avinu, and the matriarch Sarah, his wife, also represent the body, as the soul and the body. Abraham the soul, and Sarah the body. Now, interestingly enough, God tells Abraham, "Lekol ishtecha shama," listen to the voice of your wife. Listen to what your wife tells you. Abraham had a very high level of prophecy and spiritual intuition, but his wife had even more. Sarah had even more. She had a greater intuition in certain areas than Abraham even did. So Abraham is told, listen to her, which the Kabbalists explain means that the soul's purpose is to elevate the body, and therefore it has to listen to the body. The Baal Shem Tov teaches on the verse, Ki tire chamor sonacha rovetz tachas masai, when you see the donkey of your enemy struggling under its load, azoiv tazoiv imoy, you have to help him unload the donkey and then load it up again so that the donkey won't be struggling anymore under the load. So the Baal Shem Tov explains that verse as being a concept of how the soul must deal with the body. The donkey represents the body. A chamor, in Hebrew, the word chamor, the way it's written, you could read it as chamor, donkey, or chomer, physicality. In Kabbalah, things are always like that. You can read them, you can always read things two ways, or at least two ways. Chamor is a donkey. Chomer, Chomer, you would spell it in English, is physicality. So when you see your physicality struggling, azov ta'azovim, you have to help it. It's the opposite of the ascetic self-flagellation, self-inflicted approach to spirituality. We don't divorce ourselves from the world. We engage with the world in a holy way. That is the derech, the way of Kabbalah, to engage with the world in a holy way. We don't run away from the world. We don't spend time in meditation in caves and so on. Yes, there are times when that is necessary, but that's not the purpose of life. The descent of the soul was to rectify and uplift and elevate the body in which it resides, first and foremost, and then the world in which the person is living, as a composite of body and soul. So, we can understand, therefore, that this whole concept of intimate relationships is not only the intimate relationship in a literal sense between husband and wife, but between husband and wife in a spiritual sense, the soul and the body. Like Abraham and Sarah are called in the Zohar soul and body. Now, the interconnection between the soul and the body is called a yichud. Yichud. The word yichud means a unification. The soul is unified with the body, and just as bodies can be unified, as we said before, the bed represents sexual relationship, a holy sexual relationship, in which one fulfills at the very least the commandment of pru uravu, be fruitful and multiply, which is a commandment, it's a mitzvah. But that intimacy is itself can be explained on many, many different levels. Again, this is something I don't want to go into for obvious reasons. So, in the spiritual sense, the yichudim really have two components. There's two components to the yichudim. They are what the Sefer Yetzirah calls the Brit Halashon and the Brit Hamaor, the covenant of the tongue and the covenant of the male organ. In other words, just as when there is a yichud, an intimate relationship, there's intimacy between husband and wife, so generally the intimacy involves two things. It involves the yichud, the intimacy of the male organ and the female organ, as well as the intimacy of the tongue, the mouth, mouth to mouth, kissing, etc., etc. So, these two areas that the Zohar refers to them says like this, that there are 10 sfirot without substance. This is actually in Sefer Yetzirah, the first chapter, the third Mishnah. Depends on how which version you use. There's so many versions of Sefer Yetzirah that sometimes some have it as the second Mishnah, but mostly it's in the third Mishnah of Sefer Yetzirah. So it says like this. There are 10 sfirot, 10 divine emanations or divine powers without substance. In other words, they don't have physical substance, physicality in this world. And they correspond to the 10 fingers. 5 on one hand, opposite 5 on the other. And the Brit, the covenant that unites them in the middle, that comes between the 5 on the right and the 5 on the left, is the Brit Halashon, the upper unity, the covenant of the tongue, and the Brit HaMa'or and the covenant of the male organ down below. Now, if you think about it, between the 5 fingers on the right and 5 fingers on the left, so there's the tongue is in the central column, and similarly between the 5 toes on the right, 5 toes on the left, they culminate in the organ at the top of the legs. So these two are called the covenant. Now, anytime you have something that's called a covenant always corresponds to the idea of the central column because it unites things. So, the tongue can unite and the organs unite. The Arizal in Eitz Chaim, Rabbi Yitzhak Luria in Eitz Chaim, says that when we speak, and actually this is the concept that is repeated through many, many Kabbalistic works. He said the two britim, the two covenants of the tongue and of the organ, male organ, are in the same line. One is opposite the other. Ze keneged ze. And just as the uniting of the male organ with the female organ is called a yichud, a unification, so too the tongue, which he explains is primarily the power of speech. A language is called a lashon in Hebrew. Language, the power of speech, speaking. So the power of speech also unites. Just as the organs come together and unite to produce a child, So too, the organ of speech, when discussing spiritual concepts, the spiritual ideas, also form a yichud. The mouth, this power of speech, forms a yichud. Now, what happens, and this is the most important part really, what happens when there is what's called pagam habrit? When there's pagam habrit. Pagam habrit means that there is damage that has been done to the organ. When damage has been done to the organ, then what happens? When damage has been done to the covenant, what happens? So, the Arizal explains that as soon as there is improper behavior in one of them, it affects the other. When there's improper speech that comes out of a person's mouth, it affects the ability to unite physically, and it causes what's called pagam habrit. It can cause a man to spill seed in vain, which is regarded in Kabbalah as a very contaminating experience. Spreading seed in vain means that it doesn't go into the right receptacle. It's either spread out on the ground, as in the case of Er and Onan, the two sons of Judah, of Yehuda, who wasted their seed. They did not want, Er did not want his wife, Tamar, to become pregnant because she was very, very beautiful, and he felt that her getting pregnant would destroy her beauty, it would damage her beauty, and he died without having any children. And his brother then married the wife, and he too did the same thing, and he also died. So spreading one seed on the ground is a very wasting seed. In other words, emissions in vain are not a good thing. What causes them? Of course, they can be caused by desire and so on and so forth, by, obviously, by letting your eyes look at things that they're not supposed to look at, but let's leave that out of the picture for now. They can also be caused, as a result, by the wrong kind of speech, by talking, by negative talk, talking badly about other people, by telling something that is not true, sheker, by making disparaging comments about other people, by doing anything other than using speech to build up, to glorify, to improve, and so on. That can cause pagam habrit. Similarly, pagam habrit, the spilling of seed in vain, can affect a person's speech patterns and how he speaks. The more a person wastes seed, a man wastes seed, the more likely it is that his speech will become crass and vulgar, and a person will start to lie, and to lie to others, to lie to himself, and to make disparaging comments about others, and so on and so forth. The two are intimately connected. The Arizal explains that both of them, both the Brit HaLashon, the mouth, the tongue, and the male organ, they correspond to the sphira. The male organ corresponds to the sphira of Da'at or Tiferet. Both of those are possibilities. And the male organ corresponds to the sphira of Yesod. Both of those two sphirot, or all three of those sphirot rather, Da'at, Tiferet, and Yesod, are all sphirot that are associated with truth. And the opposite is falseness and crassness and so on and so on, vulgarity and so on. So all of those three are associated with truth. Now the question is, what happens if if a person has already caused a pagam habrit, caused damage in one of those areas? What happens if one has done negative things in those areas? What is the rectification? So this is where it gets very interesting. One of the works that I was reading recently explains that the best way to deal with it, as explained in the work I mentioned last time, actually, Reishit Chochmah. In Reishit Chochmah, again, Shar HaKedusha, I think it's chapter 11 or 12. In any event, he explains over there that in order to rectify a pagam habrit, damage that's been done in the area of in sexual intimacy area, in whatever way the damage may have been done. So the way to rectify that is to take control of one's speech, to stop speaking negatively, stop exaggerating, stop lying, stop criticizing, and only to say things that need to be said, and to the degree that they need to be said, and only in a positive way, and so on and so forth. So each of these can therefore rectify the other. Proper intimate relationships can rectify the power of speech. The power of speech can rectify the proper intimate relationships. These have far-reaching effects. Interestingly enough, there is another work that I was looking at that says that when a person has pagam habrit, when he's caused this damage to male organ, again, we're not talking about physical damage, but spiritual damage, that can affect it can be one of the factors that affects a person's ability to earn his livelihood. So again, the rectification of that is proper speech and proper attention to proper intimacy. Now, all of this is actually a pretty fascinating. That last point is that's how the bed affects the table. There's a relationship between bed and table in the sense that if the bed is not good, if the sexual relationship is not good, and the yichud, the intimacy through speech is not good, that's going to affect a person's livelihood, which is represented by the table. So, the idea of these two yichudim, of these two forms of intimacy, is that both of them, as we said before, even though they might be between intimacy in a physical sense, might be between man and woman, it's also the intimacy of the soul with the body. In other words, the ability of a person to feel comfortable in his own skin. That would correspond to the idea of the Brit HaYesod, Brit HaMa'or, as it's called in Sefer Yetzirah, the covenant of the male organ. That's the ability to feel comfortable in one's own skin. The Brit HaLashon, the covenant with the tongue, is the ability to unify oneself, the unification of oneself with God, the unification of one's consciousness with divine consciousness. In other words, the ability not to feel good in one's own skin, but the ability to feel in one's soul the presence, the divine presence. That's called the Yichud Ilah, the higher unity, as opposed to the lower unity. The lower unity, again, is Yesod. The higher unity is Tiferet or Dat. And particularly if we're talking about Dat being the Sphira that joins together Chokhmah and Bina, Dat. So that ability, that concept of Dat is the ability to feel the presence of the Creator, the presence of the Almighty in one's life. And that is that's called the higher unity. Now, both of these things together, therefore, are two different dimensions of the idea of bed. The intimacy, there's actually three different dimensions. The intimacy of male and female is the lowest dimension. That corresponds to the world of Asiya. The intimacy between soul and body corresponds to the world of Yetzirah. The intimacy of soul with the Creator is actually the world of Atzilut. So there's an in-between level as well, which is the intimacy of the lower souls, the lower levels of soul. There's 5 levels of soul. The intimacy of the lower levels of soul with the higher levels of soul. There's 5 levels of the soul: Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, Yechida. When Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama are intimate, so to speak, with the higher levels of soul, Chaya, Yechida, that corresponds to the world of Bria. And essentially, when Yechida is a receptacle for the divine presence within one, then that is the highest level of that's the Yichud that corresponds to the world of Atzilut, the world of Atzilut. So there you have it. The bed therefore represents intimacy on all levels in every world. It represents a concept of intimacy, from physical intimacy to the highest spiritual intimacy of the soul with God, the merging of the soul into God. In other words, that would be the world of Atzilut, where a person doesn't feel his own existence at all, and the levels in between. Okay.